Dorothy froze when she studied the photographs on the old man's desk. Even after 45 years, she recognized that face. This man is dead, she thought. I wrote the death report in 1979. But now he was here, in the nursing home, living under a false identity. 30 years of CIA experience told her exactly what this meant. Before we dive into this incredible story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if this story moves you, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I have something very special planned for you. Sunset Manor Care Facility embodied everything a quality nursing home should be: clean, comfortable, and filled with the kind of gentle activity that made elderly residents feel valued rather than warehoused. At 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, the common room buzzed with typical afternoon energy. Card games at corner tables, a small group gathered around the television, and residents enjoying supervised visits with family members. Dorothy Miller moved through the facility with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd found genuine purpose in caring for elderly people. At 72, she'd been working at Sunset Manor for 5 years, ever since she'd moved to the quiet suburb of Millbrook, looking for meaningful work after her retirement. Residents trusted her completely, staff members relied on her experience, and families appreciated her professional competence combined with genuine warmth. Dorothy's background check had shown exactly what nursing home administrators wanted to see: decades of federal government service, security clearance, attention to detail, and the kind of reliable character that made her valuable for handling sensitive resident information. What it didn't show, because some records remained classified even decades later, was the specific nature of her routine was typical: medication reminders, assistance with afternoon activities, and the kind of careful observation that ensured elderly residents received proper care. Dorothy had developed relationships with each resident, understanding their needs, their family situations, and their personal histories in ways that helped her provide better support. She was organizing afternoon medications when she noticed something that activated instincts she thought had been dormant for decades. The new resident in room 237, Viktor Petrov, had left his door slightly open while speaking on his cell phone. The conversation was in Russian, which wouldn't normally concern anyone. But Dorothy spoke fluent Russian, and what she was hearing wasn't the kind of casual family conversation typical of elderly immigrants. Dorothy's Russian language skills had been acquired during 30 years as a CIA analyst specializing in Soviet operations during the Cold War. From 1965 to 1995, she'd spent her career tracking, analyzing, and occasionally orchestrating the kind of intelligence operations that shaped global politics while remaining completely invisible to public scrutiny. The conversation she was overhearing contained terminology that triggered alarms in her trained mind: references to assets, activation protocols, and memory recovery techniques. More concerning was Victor's mention of specific nursing homes in 3 different states and what sounded like a coordinated operation targeting elderly residents. Dorothy continued her routine while conducting the kind of casual surveillance that had once been her profession. Viktor Petrov appeared to be a typical 78-year-old Russian immigrant. Family photos on his desk, medical equipment for managing diabetes, the usual accumulation of personal items that elderly people treasured. But his photograph collection included faces that Dorothy recognized from classified files she'd studied decades ago. One photograph in particular made her blood run cold. The man in the image had been declared dead in a Prague operation in 1979, an operation Dorothy had personally debriefed and documented. Yet here he was, clearly photographed recently, apparently alive and well, and connected to whatever Victor was planning. Dorothy's analysis was immediate and troubling. Either her memory was failing, which she knew it wasn't, or someone had been operating under deep cover for over 40 years, maintaining false death records while continuing intelligence work. The implications for national security were staggering. Over the next 3 days, Dorothy conducted the kind of systematic observation that had made her valuable to the CIA for 3 decades. She noted visitors, phone calls, conversations, and behavioral patterns while maintaining her cover as a helpful nursing aide who simply happened to be in the right places at the right times. What she discovered was deeply disturbing. Victor wasn't the only anomaly at Sunset Manor. At least 3 other residents showed signs of backgrounds that didn't match their official histories. More concerning, they were being visited by people who displayed the kind of professional surveillance skills that Dorothy recognized from her own training. The visitors asked questions that seemed innocuous but followed patterns designed to extract specific information about the residents' past lives, family connections, and previous government service. Dorothy realized she was witnessing something unprecedented, a systematic intelligence operation targeting elderly Americans who'd had classified government careers. "Mrs. Patterson," Dorothy said carefully to one of the residents who'd been receiving unusual attention, "have your recent visitors been asking about your late husband's work?" Mrs. Patterson looked confused. "How did you know?" That nice young woman seemed so interested in Harold's career at the State Department. She was writing a book about diplomatic history. Dorothy's suspicions were confirmed. Harold Patterson had been a CIA operative whose cover had been diplomatic service. Someone was systematically identifying and targeting the widows and families of intelligence personnel, using their isolation and loneliness to extract information that could compromise ongoing operations or reveal classified details from decades-old missions. Dorothy's training kicked in completely. This wasn't a job for local law enforcement or even typical federal authorities. This was a sophisticated intelligence operation that required someone with deep understanding of how such operations functioned. Someone exactly like the analyst she'd been for 30 years. She began documenting everything with the systematic precision that had made her valuable to the agency. Visitor patterns, conversation topics, specific questions being asked, and most importantly, the operational methodology being employed. The techniques were sophisticated, professional, and designed to avoid detection by anyone without intelligence training. The breakthrough came when she recognized one of the frequent visitors. Elena Kozlov had been a KGB operative Dorothy had tracked during the 1980s, someone who'd supposedly died in a car accident in Berlin in 1987. Yet here she was, very much alive, very active, and apparently running a complex operation against elderly Americans with classified backgrounds. Dorothy faced a decision that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. She was 72 years old, officially retired, living a quiet life as a nursing home aide. But she was also the only person positioned to recognize and respond to a threat that could compromise decades of American intelligence operations. Her old training manuals had been very clear about situations like this. When active intelligence threats were identified, personnel had an obligation to respond using whatever resources and capabilities they possessed. Dorothy's first call was to a number she'd memorized, but never expected to use again. The CIA maintains contact protocols for retired personnel who might encounter situations requiring their expertise. The response was immediate and concerned. Dorothy Miller, employee number 4471, retired 1995, she said when the secure line connected. "I have an active intelligence situation requiring immediate assessment." Within 6 hours, Dorothy found herself in a downtown hotel room briefing 2 current CIA operatives about what she'd discovered at Sunset Manor. Agent Sarah Chun and Agent Michael Torres listened with growing alarm as Dorothy laid out evidence of what appeared to be a systematic Russian intelligence operation targeting elderly Americans. "They're not just gathering general information," Dorothy explained. "They're specifically targeting spouses and families of deceased intelligence personnel. The operational methodology suggests they're trying to reconstruct networks and relationships from the Cold War era." Agent Chin studied Dorothy's documentation with obvious professional respect. "Your analysis indicates this operation has been running for several years across multiple facilities." "At least 18 months, Dorothy confirmed. "Possibly longer." The sophistication suggests state-level backing and coordination with other intelligence services. The implications were staggering. If successful, the operation could expose decades of American intelligence work, compromise ongoing operations, and potentially endanger current operatives whose cover stories relied on maintaining the classified nature of historical missions. Dorothy found herself in the unusual position of being activated for field work at the age of 72. Her deep cover as a nursing home aide provided perfect access to continue monitoring the operation while gathering younger operatives couldn't obtain. "Your position is ideal," Agent Torres explained. You have legitimate access, established relationships with the targets, and 30 years of experience in exactly this type of operation. Dorothy's new mission was to gather evidence while protecting the elderly residents who'd been targeted. This required balancing her concern for their safety with the need to understand the full scope of the Russian operation before disrupting it. Working with her handlers, Dorothy implemented countermeasures designed to feed false information to the Russian operatives while documenting their methods and objectives. The operation revealed patterns that extended far beyond Sunset Manor, a coordinated effort involving multiple nursing homes across 3 states. They're trying to reconstruct Operation Venona, Dorothy realized during one of her briefings. They want to identify American intelligence assets who were never officially acknowledged. Venona had been a decades-long effort to decode Soviet communications, revealing extensive espionage networks in the United States. Many of the Americans who'd worked on counterintelligence operations had never been publicly acknowledged, making them perfect targets for this type of retrospective intelligence gathering. The operation culminated when Dorothy identified the full scope of the Russian effort. What at first seemed like isolated cases soon revealed itself as a carefully organized campaign. Elena Kozlov and her team weren't visiting retirement homes out of kindness. They had been systematically targeting nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and senior communities where retired intelligence personnel or their families were quietly living out their final years. They've been using our own compassion against us, Dorothy explained to her handlers during a late-night briefing. Elderly people are lonely, eager to talk, eager to share their memories with anyone who listens. Vulnerability makes them perfect targets. Kozlov's team disguised themselves as caregivers, volunteers, even distant relatives. They weren't after new technology. They were collecting fragments of old missions, names, operations. Pieces of the past that still matter. The FBI response was swift but precise. Raids were coordinated across 3 states. Time to strike before dawn. Tactical teams breached apartments and safe houses, seizing encrypted laptops, forged IDs, and bundles of surveillance notes. Elena Kozlov herself was arrested at a modest suburban property, where agents uncovered hidden compartments filled with documents and burner phones. By the end of the day, 12 associates were also in custody. The charges, espionage, conspiracy, and violations of the Intelligence Identities Protection Act, made headlines across the country. Behind those headlines, Dorothy's contribution was recognized quietly. Her patient work at Sunset Manor, her careful conversations with residents, and her meticulous notes had provided the foundation for the case. Without her observations, much of the network might have remained invisible. When the dust settled, Dorothy returned to her duties at Sunset Manor. On the surface, nothing had changed. She delivered meals, managed medication schedules, and made her evening rounds as before. But inside, her outlook had shifted. She now saw the residents not only as elderly people needing care, but as living chapters of history. Some had carried secrets for decades, secrets that had shaped the world. One evening, she stopped at Mrs. Patterson's room. The older woman, sitting by the window with a blanket over her knees, greeted her warmly. Dorothy hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. "Mrs. Patterson, would you like to talk about your husband's real work?" The question hung in the air. Mrs. Patterson blinked in surprise. You know about Harold's actual career?" Dorothy gave a small nod. "I know enough. And I know it's safe now for who he really was, not just the cover story." Mrs. Patterson's eyes grew moist, and for the first time in years, her voice trembled with relief rather than grief. He always hoped someone would remember him for the truth. Dorothy reached out, steady and reassuring. In that moment, she realized her mission wasn't just about stopping espionage networks. It was also about protecting dignity, preserving memory, and allowing those who had served in silence to finally be acknowledged. The Russians had been stopped, but Dorothy's work, quiet, unseen, and deeply human, was far from over. 6 months later, Dorothy continued her work at Sunset Manor with new purpose. She'd been officially consulted by the CIA to develop protocols for protecting elderly former intelligence personnel from similar operations. Her experience had revealed a vulnerability that national security agencies had never considered. Retirement doesn't end service, she explained to a gathering of facility administrators who'd been briefed on protecting residents with classified backgrounds. Some secrets need to be guarded for life, and some people need protection even when they're no longer actively serving their country. Dorothy's phone buzzed with a secure message from Agent Shun. New facility in Oregon showing similar visitor patterns. Are you available for consultation? Dorothy looked around at the residents she'd grown to care for, then at the new protocols that would help protect elderly Americans with classified backgrounds. She was 72 years old, officially retired, and supposedly living a quiet life caring for elderly people. But she was also Dorothy Miller, CIA analyst, guardian of American intelligence secrets, and apparently still very much in service to her country. Tell them I'll review the files tonight, she texted back. Some careers never really end. They just change locations and find new ways to serve. Miller continued her dual life, caring for elderly residents by day, protecting national security by night, proving that the most important guardians are often the ones who've learned that true service never retires. Have you ever encountered someone whose quiet work was protecting things you never realized needed protection? Share your stories in the comments below, and let us know what city you're watching from today, if this story of hidden service and enduring dedication resonated with you. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And don't miss the 2 compelling stories appearing on your screen right now. Click and discover more tales of everyday heroes with extraordinary legacies. Because sometimes the most important work is done by people who've learned that protecting others is a lifetime commitment, regardless of age or official status. See you in the next videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe.